Anne of the Island, Anne of Green Gables, #3, by L.M. Montgomery. A new chapter begins. The crisp autumn air was filled with the rustling of golden leaves as Anne stood on the moonlit veranda, her gaze lingering on the serene lake. The soft glow of the moon bathed everything in a gentle light, creating a peaceful ambience that was both comforting and melancholic. Charlie Sloane, who had been quietly observing from a corner, admired Anne's contemplative figure against the picturesque backdrop. Dot! Dot! Anne, are you ready? Gilbert's voice broke the silence, his figure emerging from the shadows. Anne turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the moon's luminescence. I suppose I am, though it feels like leaving a part of myself behind, she confessed, her voice tinged with a mix of excitement and sorrow. Gilbert stepped closer, offering a reassuring smile. Redmond College won't know what hit it when you arrive. You're going to shine, Anne, just as you always have. A playful glint appeared in Anne's eyes. And what of you, Gilbert? Off to study medicine, I hear. Will you remember us mere mortals when you're a renowned doctor? I could never forget you, Anne. You're the one who set the bar so high, he replied, his tone warm and sincere. They shared a laugh, the sound mingling with the night's whispers. It was a moment of pure friendship, a testament to the bond they had forged over the years. Charlie's voice called out, less abrupt now that his presence had been established earlier. Anne, come and talk to me for a bit, he said, his words dripping with boredom. Anne rolled her eyes good-naturedly and excused herself from Gilbert's company. As she made her way towards Charlie, Ruby Gillis and Gilbert began to chat, their laughter and gaiety filling the air. Anne felt a twinge of envy, not for any romantic reason, but because she longed for the same carefree laughter she once shared with Gilbert before the weight of future expectations had settled upon them. The evening wore on with Anne politely listening to Charlie's monologue about his latest hunting trip. Her mind wandered, thinking about the letter she had received from Priscilla earlier that week. Priscilla had written about her summer adventures with such vivacity, describing the bustling city streets and the tranquil countryside, reigniting Anne's excitement about college and the world beyond Avonlea. As the night drew to a close, Anne bid farewell to her friends, her heart heavy with the thought of leaving Avonlea behind. The party, vibrant with the hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses, seemed to pause as she made her rounds, the air thick with the unspoken acknowledgement of her departure. Gilbert walked her to the edge of the party, his eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. Write to me often, Anne, he said, his voice low and serious. I will, she promised, feeling a lump form in her throat. With one last glance at the lake, Anne turned and disappeared into the autumn darkness, a flood of memories washing over her. She recalled the first time she had arrived at Green Gables, an orphan with wild imagination and unruly red braids. Now she was leaving behind the only home she had ever known, the place that had shaped her into the young woman she had become. The party, hosted by Josie Pye and her sisters, had been a warm and congenial affair, an unusual feat for the Pye girls. The house, chosen for its size and convenience, was filled with the soft glow of candlelight and adorned with festive decorations. Floral arrangements and streamers added a touch of cheer, creating a pleasant atmosphere for the guests. Soft music played in the background, providing a subtle backdrop to the hum of conversation and laughter. As Anne walked away, she thought of the spare room at Green Gables, the one she had always considered a shrine to her childhood dreams. She wondered if anyone would understand her attachment to that room, with its closed shutters and air of nostalgia. Would she ever feel the same sense of belonging anywhere else? Anne's thoughts also drifted to Mrs. Lyndon Marilla, whose tear-filled eyes had given away their true emotions despite their stoic farewells. She knew that coming back for vacations wouldn't be the same as living there. Things would inevitably change. Yet she embraced the uncertainty of the future, preferring not to know what lay beyond the bend in the road. Unbeknownst to Anne, Gilbert watched her as they walked together, his heart filled with a mixture of admiration and hope. He wondered if he could ever make her care for him in the same way he cared for her. Their friendship had grown over the years, and he knew that Anne, with her thoughtful nature and reflective spirit, had set a standard for him that he strived to meet. As Anne ventured into the unknown, the stars twinkled above, guiding her towards new experiences and possibilities. Though she felt the weight of leaving Avonlea, she also felt a sense of anticipation for the adventures that awaited her at Redmond College and beyond. The crisp autumn air carried her forward, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Friendships and first impressions. The autumn leaves crunched under Anne's feet as she and Priscilla made their way across the Redmond campus. They felt small amidst the grand old buildings and the throngs of students who seemed to know exactly where they were going. Anne's green eyes were wide with wonder, but also a touch of apprehension. "Pris, do you ever feel like we're just two tiny boats lost in a sea of confident ships?" Anne asked. Priscilla gave her a reassuring smile. "I do, Anne. But remember, even the mightiest ship was once just a boat that held on." Their conversation was interrupted by a cheerful voice. "Hello there. You're Anne and Priscilla from Queens, aren't you?" The girl who approached them was none other than Philippa Gordon, her arms open and her smile infectious. "Yes, we are," Priscilla replied as Anne nodded. "I saw you this morning and thought, now there are two girls I must get to know," Philippa exclaimed. "I'm Phil, short for Philippa, but everyone calls me Phil." Philippa's laughter was like music, and her candid nature was refreshing. "I should have come over sooner, but I can never make up my mind quickly," Phil confessed. "It's a wonder I even decided to come to college instead of getting married." Anne couldn't help but laugh. "I think you've made the right choice, Phil. There's a whole world to explore here. Will you two come to visit me? I'd love to be friends. And I promise, I'm not as silly as I sound. I just like to have a bit of fun, you know. Life's too short for being serious all the time." Anne's eyes sparkled with mirth. "I couldn't agree more, Phil. And yes, we'd be delighted to visit you." As they chatted, Anne felt the earlier unease slip away, replaced by the warmth of potential friendship. Phil was like a breath of fresh air, her vivacious spirit infectious. "Tell me, Anne," Phil said, leaning in with a conspiratorial grin. "What's your story about the grave?" Anne's imagination took flight as she wove a tale of love and loss at sea, the three girls hanging on her every word. When she finished, there was a moment of silence filled with the echoes of the story. Phil broke the silence with a clap of her hands. "What a storyteller you are. I feel as if I've been transported to another time." The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the campus. As they stood up from the gravestone, Anne felt a sense of belonging. This was just the beginning of many adventures at Redmond, and with friends like Phil, she was ready for whatever came next. The chapter of their college life was just starting to unfold, and it promised to be an exciting one. The adventures of college life. As autumn's embrace heralded the changing seasons at Redmond College, Anne Shirley found herself reflecting on the intricate tapestry of her life. The campus was alive with the energy of students, each pursuing their own dreams and ambitions. Anne, with her characteristic zest for life, engaged in her studies and cherished the camaraderie of her peers. Gilbert Blythe, the constant presence, was a source of both challenge and comfort. Their interactions, though marked by a shared history and mutual respect, remained grounded in the present, focused on their academic pursuits and the simple joys of companionship. The days unfolded with the rhythm of college life, bringing with them moments of introspection and growth. Anne navigated her journey with a spirit of independence, her aspirations not tied to accolades, but to the richness of experiences and the bonds she formed along the way. In the midst of this, Anne's path crossed with various individuals, each leaving an indelible mark on her story. Through laughter and earnest conversations, through shared struggles and triumphs, the fabric of her college days was woven with threads of enduring friendships and self-discovery. As the leaves turned from gold to crimson, Anne's experiences at Redmond deepened. She found joy in the simple pleasures of campus life, from the laughter that echoed through the halls to the quiet moments of solitude that allowed her to ponder her future. The friendship she nurtured, particularly with Diana, provided a comforting counterbalance to the pressures of academia. Together, they shared secrets and dreams, their bond unshaken by the passage of time or the distance between them. Anne's creative spirit soared as she penned stories and essays, her words a reflection of her innermost thoughts and aspirations. Though she faced challenges, her resilience and determination shone through, a beacon to those who knew her well. As the semester progressed, Anne's story continued to unfold, a narrative rich with discovery and the promise of tomorrow. Independence and belonging. The autumn leaves crunched beneath Anne and her friends' feet as they approached Patty's place, a quaint house aglow with the promise of their future. "Our very own place," Anne exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Priscilla, ever practical, nodded, reminding them of the need for financial prudence. Phil, the optimist, focused on the fun ahead, while Stella lightheartedly reminded them of their academic responsibilities. Inside, the girls gathered by the fireplace, the crackling fire casting a warm glow on their faces. Anne breathed in the scent of burning wood, savoring the moment and the sense of camaraderie. They delved into discussions about their plans and rules for their new home, their voices blending with the snap of the fire. A knock interrupted them, and there stood Gilbert, his hands buried in his coat pockets, a smile playing on his lips. He presented them with a bundle of quilts from Mrs. Lynde, a thoughtful gesture to ward off the cold. Anne's gratitude shone in her eyes, reflecting the warmth of the fire. As the quilts were spread out, the girls settled into their new life at Patty's place, creating memories and forging stronger bonds of friendship and independence. Their laughter and study sessions filled the house, each day bringing them closer together. And as winter's chill deepened, the warmth within Patty's place only grew, a testament to the power of their shared experiences. Mortality and maturity. Anne's heart sank as she walked into the Gillis's house. She had been dreading this visit for weeks, but she knew she had to see Ruby. The news of Ruby's illness had spread like wildfire through Avonlea, and Anne couldn't bear the thought of not being there for her friend. As she entered the room, Ruby looked up from her bed, her eyes sunken and her skin pale. Anne felt a lump form in her throat as she approached Ruby's bedside. "Ruby, I'm so sorry," Anne said, trying to hold back tears. "I had no idea it was this bad." Ruby forced a weak smile. "It's okay, Anne. I'm just glad you're here." Anne sat down beside Ruby, taking her hand in hers. "I'm going to stay with you until you get better," she promised. Just then, Mrs. Lynde walked into the room, her face stern. As a close friend and neighbor, Mrs. Lynde had been keeping a watchful eye on Ruby's condition and had grown concerned about her worsening health. "Ruby, dear, you need to face reality," she said bluntly. "You're not getting better. You need to make peace with your situation." Ruby's eyes flashed with anger, but Anne could see the fear lurking behind them. "I don't want to talk about it," Ruby snapped. Anne felt a pang of sadness as she watched Ruby struggle to come to terms with her mortality. She knew that Ruby was scared and she didn't know how to help her. Over the next few days, Anne visited Ruby regularly, trying to lift her spirits and provide comfort. But as the days went by, Ruby's condition only worsened. Anne could see the life draining out of her friend, and it broke her heart. Anne decided to write a story for Ruby, one that would bring her comfort and hope in her final days. She poured her heart into the story, writing about a girl who faced an uncertain future but found solace in the love and support of her friends. The story was a reflection of Anne's own feelings and experiences with Ruby, and she hoped it would bring some peace to her friend. As she read the story to Ruby, Anne watched as tears streamed down Ruby's face. "Anne," Ruby whispered after the story ended, "thank you for being my friend, for bringing light into these dark days." Anne squeezed Ruby's hand, feeling the weight of her words. You've always been a light to us, Ruby. We're here for you, always." Anne's voice was steady, but her heart was heavy with the knowledge that these moments were precious and few. The chapter concluded with Anne's profound understanding that maturity is not merely about age or wisdom. It is about the strength to face the most challenging times with grace and the capacity to give and receive love. And in the quiet presence of her dear friend, Anne realized that while mortality is an inescapable part of existence, the memories and connections forged in the heart are eternal. Return to Avonlea. Anne stepped off the train and onto the familiar platform of Avonlea Station. It was a crisp autumn morning, with the sun shining brightly overhead. As she made her way through the station, she couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia wash over her. She had been away for so long, chasing her dreams and making new friends in Redmond. But now she was back in her hometown, surrounded by the people and places she loved. Phil, who had accompanied Anne on her journey from Redmond, smiled warmly as they walked out of the station together. "It's good to be back, isn't it?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Anne nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "It's like coming home," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As they walked through the quiet streets of Avonlea, Anne noticed the changes that had taken place during her absence. The town seemed quieter, with many familiar faces absent or changed. Diana Barry, her dear friend, was busy preparing for her upcoming wedding. Gilbert Blythe's presence in her life remained constant, and Anne's heart skipped a beat as she thought of him, wondering if he would be waiting for her at Green Gables. As they approached Green Gables, Anne felt a sense of resolve wash over her. She knew that she needed to confront her feelings about Gilbert and figure out what she truly wanted from life. "Thanks for coming with me, Phil," Anne said, hugging her friend tightly. Phil smiled. "Anytime, Anne. Now let's get back to Green Gables and see what adventures await us." As they walked back through the quiet streets of Avonlea, Anne wondered what the future held for her. But one thing was certain: she was ready to face whatever came next. The complexity of love. Anne sat quietly in the dimly lit parlor of Patty's place, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the intricate patterns on the armrest of her chair. The room was silent except for the soft ticking of the grandfather clock and the occasional crackle from the fireplace. "Anne, you've been staring at that same spot for an hour," Priscilla said, her voice laced with concern as she set down a cup of tea beside Anne. Anne sighed, her gaze finally breaking away to meet Priscilla's. "I need to talk to Gilbert." Priscilla took a seat opposite Anne, her expression softening. "What's holding you back?" Philippa walked in, her cheeks flushed from the crisp autumn air. "Anne, darling, what's wrong? You look like you've lost your last friend." Anne managed a small smile. "I think I have some unfinished business to attend to." The next day, Anne found herself walking down the familiar path to Green Gables. Her heart raced as she approached the Blythe home. Mrs. Blythe answered the door, her expression unreadable. "Is Gilbert available?" Anne asked, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. Mrs. Blythe nodded. "He's in the garden." Anne walked through the house and out to the garden, where she found Gilbert sitting on a bench, his eyes fixed on a nearby flower bed. She approached him slowly, her heart heavy with emotions. "Gilbert," she said softly, trying to gauge his reaction. He looked up, his eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken words. "I heard about your engagement," Anne said finally, trying to sound casual despite the ache in her chest. Gilbert's face fell and he looked away, his jaw clenched. "Yes, I suppose it's no secret now." Anne took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I wanted to talk to you about us, about what could have been." Gilbert turned back to her, his eyes searching hers. But before he could continue, a commotion erupted from behind them. A young woman burst into the garden, out of breath and frantic-looking. "Gilbert! Oh, thank goodness I found you," she exclaimed. Anne's heart sank as she realized it was Christine Stewart, Gilbert's fiancée. The scene was awkward, with Kristen looking at Anne with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. Gilbert stood up, his face pale, as he tried to intervene. "Christine, what's wrong?" Christine barely acknowledged Anne's presence, her eyes fixed on Gilbert. "I just received a letter from my cousin, and it seems there's a family secret that could change everything." Anne felt a pang of curiosity, despite the awkwardness of the situation. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gilbert's eyes darted towards Anne before returning to Christine. "Let's talk about this inside," he suggested, his tone firm but polite. As they walked away, Anne couldn't help but wonder what this new revelation could mean for her and Gilbert. Was it possible that their paths would cross again? Or was this just another obstacle in their complicated history? Love conquers all. Anne stood in the heart of Hester Gray's garden, a place of dreams and serenity. The air was heavy with the fragrance of flowers, and the gentle murmur of the nearby brook added to the tranquil atmosphere. It was here that she and Gilbert had shared so many moments, and now their story would take a new turn. Gilbert's voice broke the peaceful silence. "Anne," he said, stepping closer, "I've longed for this moment. There's something I must tell you." His voice was steady, yet filled with emotion. Anne's heart raced as their eyes met. "What is it, Gilbert?" she asked softly. "Anne, I love you," Gilbert confessed. "I have always loved you, and I know that my feelings will never change. I want to be with you forever." Anne's breath caught in her throat as his words sank in. A myriad of emotions washed over her: joy, surprise, and a profound sense of happiness. She felt a rush of gratitude for this moment, and for the love that had blossomed between them. "Oh, Gilbert," she whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I love you too. I can't believe I didn't realize it sooner. I was afraid that acknowledging my feelings would jeopardize our friendship. I could never bear to lose what we have." Gilbert took a step forward and gently drew her into his embrace. "Shh. It's all right now," he murmured tenderly. "I understand your fears, and I feel the same way. Our friendship is precious to me, and I wouldn't risk losing it for anything. But now, I know that it has blossomed into something more beautiful than I could have imagined." Anne lifted her eyes to meet his, her heart brimming with love and gratitude. "I'm so glad we found each other, Gilbert. It's as if the dreams we once dreamed in this very garden are finally coming to life." He smiled, his eyes reflecting the depth of his affection. "Yes, and I promise to be patient, Anne. I know that my medical studies will take another 3 years, but I'm willing to work and wait for our future together. We can support each other and keep dreaming always." Anne nodded, her heart overflowing with love and determination. "I promise too, Gilbert. I'll work hard during these years apart. We'll write to each other often, sharing our experiences and dreams. And when the time is right, we will be together, building a life filled with love and all the dreams we've nurtured." In that moment, surrounded by the beauty and tranquility of Hester Gray's garden, Anne and Gilbert knew that their love had conquered all obstacles and misunderstandings. The garden, with its golden rod, aster flowers, and soothing brook, bore witness to their joy and became a sacred place in their hearts, a symbol of their enduring love and the promise of forever.